Myles Garrett fires back at Jeudy after he attacked Shedeu. Myles Garrett had heard enough. For days, the chatter around the league had revolved not around standings or playoff probability, not around film sessions or matchups, but around a brewing storm of words and ego that centered on Shedeu, the Cleveland Browns' young quarterback learning to survive in a season that had turned into a relentless gauntlet. Garrett, the face of the franchise for years, the All-Pro, the quiet enforcer who rarely stepped into drama unless the line had been crossed, found himself drawn directly into the eye of it when Jeudy's comments exploded across social media. The Broncos receiver had dismissed Sanders' toughness, questioned his readiness, and hinted that the rookie quarterback was being carried by hype, not by tape. It was an attack not only on Sanders, but on the culture and unity the Browns had tried desperately to rebuild in a season already decorated with scars. The remark lingered in the air long after it left Jeudy's mouth, replayed on sports shows, dissected on podcasts, inflated on social platforms where opinions grow like wildfire. The Browns had lost games, yes, but they had not lost their pride. Sanders had absorbed hits behind a struggling offensive line, had kept his eyes downfield when chaos collapsed around him, and had won respect inside the locker room one huddle at a time. For Jeudy to belittle that journey felt like a shot aimed at the entire building. And nobody protects the building more fiercely than Myles Garrett. Garrett heard the comments while rehabbing in the team facility, stretching out a shoulder that had endured far too many battles already this season. At first he laughed, a low, tired laugh, the kind a veteran gives when someone outside takes a shallow swing at a teammate he sees every day bleeding for the cause. But when reporters pressed him about Jeudy's words, and when younger teammates asked whether they should respond publicly or let it fade into the noise, Garrett stood up. Something inside him refused to let this slide. The Browns had been criticized enough. Sanders had been doubted enough. And in a year where hard lessons were being tattooed onto the team's identity, Garrett felt a responsibility to step between his quarterback and the unnecessary fire. He spoke calmly, but his message cut like steel. He reminded the world that Sanders had earned everything he'd fought for. Nothing handed, nothing staged, nothing propped up beyond his work ethic and composure. He said that in Cleveland's locker room, respect is currency, and Shedeu's bank account is full. He didn't call Jeudy's remarks disrespectful. He didn't need to. His tone made it clear. Garrett's words echoed louder because they came from someone who almost never engages in verbal squabbles. Quiet leaders rarely raise their voices, so when they do, people listen. Behind the scenes, Sanders heard the comments too. He brushed them off the way he brushed off a linebacker barreling free on a missed assignment. It wasn't the first time he'd been criticized, and it certainly wouldn't be the last. He'd grown up under a microscope that most players never experience. The son of Deion Sanders, raised in expectation, trained in confidence. But even the strongest-minded quarterbacks feel the weight of public disrespect, especially when it paints them as something less than what they are attempting to become. Sanders didn't ask Garrett to defend him. He didn't need to. The bond between quarterback and franchise cornerstone had already formed, one built not from wins and highlight plays, but from battered practices, bruised Sundays, and a shared understanding of what it means to fight uphill every single week. Garrett's response lit a fuse across the NFL. Players chimed in on both sides, some defending Jeudy's right to critique, others praising Garrett for protecting a young quarterback in a league that often eats them alive before they've had time to take a breath. Analysts debated the implications, questioning whether Garrett's public defense would add pressure to Sanders or inspire him. Fans rallied behind it, grateful to see their superstar reminding the world that Cleveland protects its own. Even Jeudy himself seemed surprised by the backlash, his initial shot thrown casually but landing heavily. The Browns stepped into their next week of preparation with a new layer of emotion simmering just beneath the surface. Practices felt sharper. Sanders' footwork carried more urgency. Garrett's presence loomed larger, as if he'd put the entire team on his shoulders one more time. Defensive linemen joked about not letting Sanders get touched all week, while offensive players traded knowing glances each time Sanders completed another crisp throw in tight windows. A locker room that had endured adversity now felt galvanized, almost thankful for the spark Jeudy unintentionally provided. Privately, though, Garrett reflected on something deeper. He remembered being young in this league, feeling doubted, feeling misinterpreted, feeling as though every mistake turned into a narrative he had not authored. He knew what it was like to carry expectations that sometimes felt heavier than pads. When he looked at Sanders, he didn't see hype. He saw a young man trying to grow into himself while the world impatiently demanded he already be complete. He saw maturity, poise, and a willingness to take responsibility even when blame should have been shared. So when Jeudy dismissed him, Garrett felt it personally. By the time the weekend arrived, the storyline had stretched into something symbolic. A veteran standing up for a rookie. A team responding to disrespect with unity. A reminder that criticism cuts deeper when directed at someone still learning how to navigate the league's harsh spotlight. Sanders, for his part, seemed unaffected. In film sessions, he spoke clearly, reviewed mistakes honestly, and even cracked a few jokes. But Garrett noticed the fire behind his eyes. The silent promise of a player determined to write his own answers between the lines of the field instead of on social media. Game day carried a new tension. The Browns took the field with a chip that felt sharpened by the week's drama. Every block seemed to linger a fraction longer. Every route demanded precision. Every defensive snap echoed with a quiet fury. Sanders played with a measured calm, refusing to force throws, refusing to let emotion dictate decisions. Garrett roamed like a storm, crashing through linemen with the kind of controlled violence that only generational pass rushers can summon. His performance felt like a statement, not just to Jeudy, not just to critics, but to Sanders himself. A promise that as long as Garrett wore a Browns uniform, no one would tear down his quarterback without facing him first. When the final whistle sounded and the Browns walked off the field, Sanders approached Garrett with a nod that said everything words couldn't. Gratitude, respect, brotherhood. Garrett returned the gesture with a simple pat on the shoulder pads and a low reminder that in the NFL, loyalty is one of the few things a player can choose for himself. Sanders had earned his. Garrett chose to honor it. Later, during the post-game press availability, Garrett was asked again about Jeudy's comments. He didn't escalate it. He didn't dwell on it. He simply said that players should focus on lifting teammates rather than tearing down others, and that his quarterback handled himself with composure that exceeded his years. It was a subtle closing chapter to a story that didn't need more gasoline. The NFL drama machine moved on, as it always does, but within the Browns facility, the moment was not forgotten. It became part of their season's narrative, a reminder that unity matters, that support matters, that even in a losing year identity can be forged in loyalty rather than scoreboard results. For Sanders, the incident became fuel. Not anger, not resentment, just a quiet determination to prove that belief in him is never misplaced. For Garrett, it reaffirmed his role not only as a leader, but as a guardian of the standards he expects from anyone who steps into the Browns organization. And for the league, it served as one more example of why Myles Garrett commands respect wherever he goes. Strength is measured in sacks, in Pro Bowls, in dominance, but sometimes it is measured more deeply in the moments where a leader decides to stand up for someone still finding his voice. In Cleveland's long, winding, often painful season, a verbal jab from Jeudy became a turning point, not because it broke the Browns, but because it reminded them who they are when forced to choose between silence and solidarity. They chose solidarity. They chose Sanders. And Myles Garrett, with just a few powerful words, ensured that everyone knew it.